So recently on Blues Rock Review, we put out an article, the top 10 blues rock guitarists of the 1970s. And there was an interesting response. It got a lot of comments and a lot of people talking. And I think everybody has their own list. Obviously, it's a subjective thing determining who the top 10 blues rock guitarists of the 1970s would be. Anthony, I know this is kind of an era that you're very fond of. Who are some of those guys, some of those guitar players from the 1970s that really stick out to you? Who are your favorites from that era?
Okay, my list. Number 143. To me, the guy that doesn't get any recognition these days is Ritchie Blackmore. I think Ritchie, maybe his personality was difficult for some people, and they sort of shunned him because he said some less than flattering things of other guitar players of renown. But I think that Ritchie is in almost a league by himself. He's such a wonderful player. And the 70s is blues rock heaven. I mean, it's the golden era. So you've got, of course, the usual suspects, right? Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, Eric Clapton, Free, Paul Kossoff, what a wonderful guitar player. Jimi Hendrix dies in 1970, and his legacy is still felt. Eddie Van Halen comes out in 1978, rewrites the book for blues rock guitar and takes it into the stratosphere. Then you also have, what's interesting is a lot of rock guys are influenced by the blues, but you also have blues people like Freddie King that's now getting influenced by rock and roll, and it's Shelter recordings. Burglar is a great album from the mid 70s, and a lot of blues rock people cite this album. Buddy Guy, I mean, he was born to rock, and his output in the 70s isn't that great, but he's still out there defining the genre. So yeah, Carlos Santana, David Gilmour. Yeah, I've got a huge list, but Rory Gallagher, another guy who was tearing up the stages. So yeah, those are my top 25.
Yeah, I'm glad that you mentioned Paul Kossoff. That was one name that wasn't on our list, who I actually thought probably should have deserved to be there. He has some really great stuff with Free, obviously. And then he put out a really cool solo album, Backstreet Crawler. That's like a great guitar album.
Yeah, Paul was definitely, I can really hear B.B. King in his playing. And he took it to that other place. And it's too bad he left too soon, like a lot of guitar players, because I think he would have created some amazing music, and maybe him and Paul Rodgers might have got back together down the road. That could have been exciting.
Anthony, if I throw out a couple names here, maybe you can tell me whether you think they belong in the pantheon, or maybe they belong in the pantheon of great guitar players, but maybe not great blues influenced guitar players. What do you think about a couple names like Joe Walsh and Frank Zappa?
Amazing and genius. Yeah, those were guys that sort of crossed my mind, and they were, do you include somebody like that? John McLaughlin. There's other folks too, like Neil Schon, who was with Santana, and then Journey, a wonderful guitar player, but maybe somebody that might be in the gray area of blues rock. Peter Green, another great one in Fleetwood Mac. Frank Zappa, what can you say, man? The guy was a genius, an absolute genius. Joe Walsh, what a melodic, wonderful player. Tommy Bolin, another great player. So, those are great choices too. And they play with soul, so they may not be playing blues per se, but Joe Walsh's biggest influence was Albert King. And, so you can hear it in his playing.
Mark, if we move to today's era, go ahead, Willie. What were you going to say?
I was just going to say one more guy I'd throw out there. Maybe he's too much towards the end of the 70s. Mark Knopfler, does he squeak in under the 70s, or is he maybe more 80s, or maybe not at all?
Mark Knopfler is amazing, a very lyrical player. And, the thing that I'm reminded about these players are their finesse and their touch. And in today's world, it's almost like it's a supercharged sports car, it's a Ferrari. But somebody like Knopfler, man, 1 or 2 notes, and he's buried you, you could throw him in the 70s. To me, the golden era of Dire Straits and Mark Knopfler, maybe the 80s. But I'll take them any decade, man. He was probably pretty great in the 60s too, you know? So, yeah.